So the hardest work in this chapter is now done. We prepared the data set. Now the next step is loading the pre-trained LLM that we want to fine-tune in the upcoming sections. So for that, this will be actually pretty simple because we will be using almost the same procedure that we used in chapter 6. So that means we are loading the pre-trained weights from OpenAI. And for that, I'm using the download and load GPT-2 function from the GPT download file. So this is just something I copy pasted in here. This is the same one we used in chapters 5 and 6. You just have to make sure if you're importing it like this, that the file gpt-download.py exists next to this notebook where you're running this notebook. And then also from the previous chapters, we are importing the GPT model class and then the load weights into GPT function. And these are exactly the same things we used in chapters 5 and 6. The only new part, everything you're seeing here is the same as we used in chapters 5 and 6. The only new part is that we are using a slightly bigger model now. So in chapters 5 and 6, we worked with 124 million parameters. Now we are working with a slightly larger version. And that is because I tried out the small version and it didn't do great. So when I trained it, the responses were really not good. And I thought, okay, I can't even tell that I trained this model. So I went one model size up and the results looked slightly better. So we could also go with these larger models. But the problem then is it's going to be slower. I'm running this on a MacBook Air computer. So, there's only so much you can do with a small old computer. So I think 355 is a nice sweet spot where we don't necessarily need a GPU to run this. Of course, ideally, I would run this on a GPU, and I actually did. But I wanted to make this code accessible to everyone or to most people. So I wanted to have an example that works also on older hardware. And so this is a nice trade-off. I actually just ran this code cell before I was recording this section so that it doesn't take too long. It takes about I would say 4 minutes to download. It's 1.4 gigabytes. So I have the files already ready. And this is essentially equivalent to what we have done in chapter 6, except now we have the larger model. And then next, I wanted to just double check how the model performs before we are training it. So here, just showing, I should probably import Torch. So here, I think I see what happened. So what happened is because I mentioned before I downloaded all the code, I restarted the notebook. Sorry, I meant I downloaded the model, and I must have accidentally restarted the notebook. So let's try this again. So we are just looking at some example text here. And so that's the input and then the instruction. And then let's use some of the things we have defined in chapter 5, the generate method, the text to token ID, and token ID to text utilities. And so the text generated was the one where we applied the temperature scaling and the top K sampling. So it's just like that function we had to generate new text. And so this receives the model. We have our utility that converts text to token IDs using the tokenizer. We create 35 new tokens. And in reality, we could actually set this number larger if we have a fine-tuned model because, remember how we set up our data set. It will be generating or the model will hopefully learn to generate an end of text token, right? So via the targets. So ideally, a well-trained model will generate this token. And then with how we set up this generate function, it will stop generating text once it encounters this end of sequence token. However, our model is not trained yet, so it might not emit this end of sequence token. So we will just limit it to 35 so it doesn't keep on generating a lot of text so that it is a bit faster here. So here we are just generating text, and then let's see how it looks like. You can see it takes a bit longer. It's a larger model now, and I'm just running it on a CPU. So it might be here we are. So let's just maybe add a print statement here. So it's nicer, and you can see, it puts a response under response, which is kind of good. But then we can also see, that doesn't do anything. So we have an instruction, write a response that appropriately completes the request. The request is convert the active sentence to passive. The chef cooks the meal every day. So a passive voice would be the meal is cooked by the chef every day or something like that. Or we can see the model doesn't really do that. It's just repeating this, right? So and then it keeps just repeating. So in that case, this model is not very useful. I wanted to show you how it looks like before it's fine-tuned. And so our goal is to make sure that the response looks okay. And by the way we set up our generate function is it's also printing the input, which we don't have to show to the user, right? So if we use something like ChatGPT, it doesn't show us the input again. It just gives us the response, right? So in that same way, we can also set up our function that it strips off everything after the response. So yeah, what we're doing here is we are replacing this. So what we're doing is first we truncate this. So if we have our input text here, right? So the input text has length. Let's see. Length input text, length 200. So in the response, in the generated text, we are first truncating this off. Yep, there we go. So let me also print this. So we are stripping off the input because we don't need this, right? So ChatGPT also doesn't repeat the input. It would be very distracting. So here we have now the cleaned response. And then still, we don't need really this tag here. This is kind of like boilerplate. It's just a formatting style. So we can actually replace this by an empty string and then also strip all the unnecessary new line characters. So if we prepare our output like this, it's much cleaner. So this is how the model would respond. And we can see the model doesn't really give the correct response. So fine-tuning the model will be hopefully making sure it gives us a better response. But yeah, I wanted to highlight that something like this is done also behind the curtains when we are using something like ChatGPT, where it also only gives us the response without any formatting boilerplate or any input repeated in the output and so forth. And so this is usually done by LLM apps in the background. Okay, so we are now set up. We have our model, which doesn't perform well. So we want to make it perform well. And that is the topic of the next section, where we are going to fine-tune this model.
Get this book at Manning.com.